Welcome to Media Spectrum, where stories don't matter. I'm your host Daniel, and today we're going to be talking about Companion. Companion is a fun, twisty thriller that I'm going to have a very hard time talking about without going into spoilers. So I'm going to have a little section up front where I talk about it without spoilers as best I can, and then I will go into full spoilers, and I'll make it clear when that happens. I also got to say, this is a very interesting case study in marketing, because in the advertising of this movie, they very much gave away a big first act reveal. And on the one hand, it is just a first act reveal. It doesn't ruin the whole movie. But on the other hand, I do kind of wish I had been able to go into this blind without knowing this thing about that character. But the good thing is, if you already do know what I'm talking about, knowing going into it does not ruin the experience at all. There are lots of twists and turns after that reveal that I did not see coming, and they do some very interesting things with their core concept. But if you don't know anything about this movie, if you have no idea what twist I'm talking about, I do encourage going into this as blind as you can. So to give a very vague, non-spoilery setup of this, the premise of this movie is that a young couple goes to their friend's house out in the woods for a little social gathering, and chaos ensues. Very, very typical setup for a horror or thriller type movie, but this movie does do some very interesting and unique things with it and takes it into some unusual directions for sure. Our main characters are this young couple, Iris and John. First, talk about Iris. She really is our main primary character. And she is somebody who has a very interesting monologue, like voiceover monologue at the beginning of the movie, showing how she met Josh. And what she says at the end of that monologue immediately makes her suspicious, to say the least, to the audience. And then as the first act is playing out, as they're showing up to this house way out in the woods and they're meeting these people, some of them know her, some of them have heard of her, everyone is treating Iris kind of strangely. There's just nothing super advert, I think. It's hard to say since I already knew the twist, but there's so many little comments, there's so much little doublespeak and things that if you already know, it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But if you don't know, I wonder how easy it would be to guess what they're kind of hinting at until they finally do reveal it. And Sophie Thatcher is fantastic as this character. She goes on a hell of a journey where she has a lot of different emotional notes she has to hit and does them all well. And she does so many little things very, very well. Like, there are times where she'll just have a subtle little eye twitch or her lip will quiver a little bit. And it communicates so damn much. I mean, they're just little touches, but they make her so believable as this particular character. And she's someone who I know that she's in some things. I saw her in Hereditary. She seems to be really growing in the horror kind of genre scene in particular. And I have a feeling we're going to see some big things from this actress over the next 2 years. And then her partner, Josh, played by Jack Quaid, the son of Dennis Quaid. And he's, very much this prototypical nice guy. But very quickly we do start seeing little chinks in his armor. Little things he does here and there that are not super overt, but do start make us questioning, like, what is the true nature of this guy? And as the movie goes along, we learn a lot more about him. And Jack Quaid does such a good job of taking that initial nice guy likability and really twisting that in some very interesting ways. And then once that big reveal at the end of the first act happens, from there it is a really fun ride that kept surprising me. Like, I knew what was happening for pretty much the whole first act, but in the second act, I thought the movie was going to go one way, and instead it went a very different way. And it just keeps doing small little things, making interesting choices that had me gripped from beginning to end. And I like that the script seems to do a really good job of writing these characters into situations where they're basically kind of running them into a corner and then finding some way to write them out. And I am being vague here. I'll go more into this when we get into spoilers. But bear in mind, this is from the same creative team who made Barbarian, which they used heavily as part of the advertising. And so if you've seen Barbarian, then you have some idea of what I'm talking about when we're talking about characters kind of twisting their initial conceptions and taking simple ideas and turning them on their head. You can definitely tell this is from the same sort of creative cloth, even though it's different. And then, as far as those differences go, one of the immediate ones is I feel like this movie was really advertised as a horror film, but it's not. I would not qualify this as horror, like, at all. Yeah, there's a few kind of gruesome kills, but there's gruesome kills in action movies, there's gruesome kills in different genres of movies. That pretty much everything Tarantino has ever done has tons of gruesome kills, and I don't think I would consider any of those movies horror. Maybe Death Proof was supposed to be, but less about that the better. But there's nothing horror about this movie to me. There's nothing in the aesthetics and the atmosphere and the vibe. There's nothing, again, other than a few of the kills overly grotesque. There's nothing all that sinister or haunting. This does play with some very real world ideas that could be twisted and pushed into a horror direction. But that's just not what this movie does. I think this is much better viewed as a thriller with a very strong sense of dark humor, a borderline dark comedy, frankly, with a healthy dash of another genre that I cannot give away yet. And if any of what I've said sounds interesting to you, this movie is available on HBO Max, and I'd encourage you to go stream it now. Because now I've exhausted what I can talk about with this movie without going into spoilers. So, spoilers upcoming in 3, 2, 1... Iris is a robot. She is totally a robot and a sex bot, in fact. A companion bot. And on the one hand, I get why they revealed that in so much of the advertising. Having the setup be a guy takes his sex bot with him to a cabin in the woods and she goes haywire and shit goes crazy is a much more specific and compelling idea than simply friends go to the woods and stuff happens. That is a really interesting twist on it. You're trying to put butts in the seats. This came out in January, which is like an infamously dead movie month at that. So I get why they gave it away, and it doesn't ruin the whole movie, but it does take a little while to even give this away in the movie. It's not like in the first 5 minutes. It's not till the end of the first act. I think it was about 20 to 25 minutes in that range until they actually make the reveal that Iris, in fact, is a robot. And in a movie that's about an hour, 45 minutes or so, that's a decent chunk of screen time. That's a good little percentage of the movie, especially on that first time watching, where if you don't know, that is a hell of a tease. And the movie's acting like you don't know yet. The movie's very much teasing something is up. And if you've paid attention to the advertisement, you know exactly what they are teasing. And again, it does not ruin the movie. I need to stress that. Once they make the reveal, it does not ruin the movie at all. But I am just a little jealous of anyone who got to see this without knowing that, because it does give an extra little surprise, an extra little jolt. But the good thing is, once that reveal happens, like I said, pretty much everything after that was not what I expected from this movie. It goes in some really interesting directions once you know the basic setup of what's going on. For example, the fact that Iris does not know she's a robot, and then having to watch her find that out and deal with it and process all that, that is a hell of an interesting twist on the concept. The fact that she's not the only robot in this group. And in hindsight, it's very obvious who it is. If you go into this movie knowing there's another robot in the group, you can probably guess who it is. But when it happened in the movie, I was like, oh shit, that they got me. I did not see that one coming. And then the way that they compare and contrast her with this other robot character and their relationships and their knowledge of who they are is just so interesting. It gets more into the actual science fiction of this, which I really appreciate. And so going into this, what I assumed was going to happen was that she was just going to go haywire and go on a killing spree and go after everybody. That's kind of the most typical horror setup of this. But that's not the way the movie goes at all. Instead, she's basically used unwittingly as like a tool because they jailbreak her to end up murdering the rich owner of the house. And from that point, she escapes and they're trying to hunt her down. And so what we have here is a movie in which we are rooting for the murderous humanoid robot to escape into civilized society. It is such a fascinating twist on what Ex Machina did, or even on something like I, Robot, where we're watching this journey through the eyes of a sympathetic human. In this case, no, the robot is our lead. The robot is our primary protagonist. And especially in a time when AI is developing, when people have very, very strong opinions about the ethics and usage of AI for all kinds of things, that's a pretty bold decision, and I'm glad they went with it. I think it made for a way more interesting movie than what I was anticipating. And don't get me wrong, this is not up there with like Blade Runner. This is not as sophisticated as Ex Machina is as far as the sci-fi goes. It's more of a thriller first, but the sci-fi element is there. And like something they bring up repeatedly, that John specifically brings up with Iris, is that she's programmed. But aren't we all programmed? Like, aren't we all programmed by our biology, by our DNA, and probably by our first few experiences in our first couple years of life? The only real difference between our programming and hers is that her programming you can control through an app. Our programming is a lot more complicated than that for now. Elon Musk is working on that. just you wait till those Neuralinks start coming out. Just you wait and we'll see how easily programmable the humanoid is. Oh, golly. And the really interesting thing to ponder is that these kind of companions the movie is using here, they basically exist already. They're just apps. They're not in a analog robotic form yet. There are already apps where, just like in the movie, you can not only set up some sort of companion to talk to you, but you can manage their appearance, you can change their eye color, you can change their hair color, you can change their personality, you can make them more agreeable, less agreeable, and yes, you can mess with their intelligence level. Everything that they show him doing with Iris are things that already exist. They're just purely in digital form. They're not analog yet. But there are very lifelike love dolls out there. Lars and the Real Girl showed us that like 10 years ago. And now, not only are those love dolls even more lifelike than they were back then, they've got robotic heads attached. So you give it another 10, 20 years at most, and I promise you that these types of autonomous, walking around, moving, functioning sex bots will exist on the market for maybe the price of a car. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about this movie, is how grounded all the science fiction is. Like, okay, yeah, the robots being so developed that you literally can't even tell the difference between them and a human at first glance. That we're probably a long ways away from. I bet even 50 years from now, the most top-of-the-line sex bots, you'll still be able to tell they're not quite human. But everything else about this, the fact that they're app controlled, the fact they are recording everything you see and do through some little line of the user agreement that nobody actually reads, the fact that you can get them as rentals if you can't afford the full one, and the fact that, as that technician casually reveals, people are doing all manner of depraved, horrible, fucked up things with these robots. It's all so real. It's all so believable. You're telling me if these types of robots existed, there wouldn't be some sick freaks out there with basements full of them doing God knows what? Have you even heard of the Epstein leaks? Like, there are some sick fucking people out there, man. And this movie does such a good job of being so real. Again, other than just how unrealistically humanoid the robots actually are, everything else about this movie 15, 20 years from now won't even be fiction. This is one of the most near future grounded real life versions of science fiction I've seen probably since Her. Her might have this beat for being just how authentic that is, but it's close. It's a very grounded concept, and I appreciate that. Especially as I'm getting older, I appreciate that more grounded, real sci-fi more so than the Star Wars space fantasy sci-fi. And of course, like any sort of sci-fi, it's also doing very good modern social commentary. There's a lot this movie has to say about dating and toxic relationships. Josh, is it Josh or John? I think I've been saying John this whole movie, but it's Josh. Jesus Christ. Whatever, is a perfect example of a nice guy that is just a wolf in sheep's clothing. He is a control freak with no balls. He is a Walter White that is not yet actualized as a Heisenberg. If you're a woman, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. If you're a dude watching this, ask one of your lady friends or female coworkers, relative, whatever. I promise you, they will have some horror story about trying to date a guy like this. And in all fairness, Kat's attitude as a sugar baby is pretty damn toxic as well. So this movie's not just going on a soapbox ranting about men being evil. There's something in there about a certain toxic guy for sure, but it shows that same behavior in women as well, just in a different way. So I think this movie's pretty fair with its critiques. It's subtle. It doesn't go that much into the modern dating critique, and I get why some people want it more than that. But I would rather a movie be a fun movie first with a little message sprinkled in than a movie be just preaching at me with its story there just to justify the preaching, you know? This definitely falls on the right side of being a fun movie with a message that's there, but not beating you over the head with it. Also, one last thing I really appreciate about this movie is the plan, and the fact that the plan is deeply, deeply flawed and falls apart in believable ways. So often, I see movies make their characters into like geniuses who come up with these ridiculous, elaborate plans that somehow go off without a hitch. Here, these characters, they're not idiots. John, what? I'm so confused now. Whatever Jack Quaid's name is, he's smart enough to jailbreak the sex bot. That takes a certain type of intelligence. It's like, I can't build a website, but I've met plenty of dumbass coders. And same for here. Just because they have some good technical knowledge does not mean they are wise enough to see everything that can go wrong. And so I appreciate that these characters are not too smart, not too dumb. They're just very believable intelligence level, which is something I think a lot of movies misjudge on one side or the other. So in conclusion, this is an enjoyable ride with a lot of surprises and some existential questions that'll linger after the movie's over. I think it lives up to the hype, and I strongly recommend it. So that's our time today. If you sat through this whole review, I definitely appreciate it. Leaving a like and subscribe definitely helps the channel grow. I'll see you next week. Until then, stay sane, stay human.